everybody. Dr. Jenny Sue here. I want to share with you some great books that you can use with your students this fall, especially now that pumpkin season is coming up. Now, in science, we don't necessarily just focus on pumpkins, but rather we focus on topics like decomposition or life cycles because we're looking to see patterns, we're looking to see changes over time. And so actually allowing pumpkins to decompose is a really good way that our students can study change over time and, like I said, patterns. So I just want to share with you some great children's literature that you can use with your students. So one of my first books that I want to share with you is called Pumpkin Circle. Of course, you can probably already guess by the title of the book that this is going to have to do something with pumpkins' life cycles. And if you said that, you'd be right. What I really like about this book is, of course, it uses realistic pictures. And I love the fact that our students can actually see, real pictures of the seed and then the seedling coming up. And then, of course, we can actually start to see characteristics of the pumpkin plant. So just like watermelons, pumpkins have these little tendrils that go out and they help them to hold the plants in place. And of course, great pictures of the leaves. Pumpkins have really, really huge leaves, and you need lots of space in a garden to plant these things. Of course, when the flower starts to appear, it's a great way to start talking to the student about the life cycle and that flowers come before the fruits. And of course, just really, really great pictures. And then, of course, we get to the pumpkins, right? So just a really great story with realistic pictures about the life cycle of a pumpkin. Now, one of my other favorite books to use, and actually this is one of the lessons that I have that I'll tag down below, really looks at and uses this story, How Many Seeds in a Pumpkin. This is a great book that connects math, but it also has a testable question in it that our students can actually explore. And so with the gist of the story, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you because I'm sure that a lot of you have probably already used this book. But what I love about it is the students get into the pumpkins and they pull the seeds out, and they have to come up with a way to actually count the number of seeds that we find in the pumpkin. And one of the questions in the book actually talks about, and they count by which ones, counting by twos, counting by fives. But then the question in the story that's really your testable question is, do the lines on the outside of the pumpkin really have a relationship to the number of seeds on the inside? And so you can have your children count the lines on the pumpkin and then count the seeds inside, and they can look to see if there is a relationship to it. So just a great little book that involves math and science. Of course, another children's book that you all are probably familiar with is called Pumpkin Jack. And this is a story about a young boy who has a pumpkin, and of course he carves it and he puts it in his room, and it, illuminates throughout the night. And then Mom says to him, hey, pumpkin's beginning to rot, right? So Jack is beginning to rot, and so he needs to really be put outside. And so the little boy, has to put him outside, and he's really sad about it. And it said whenever chores or play brought Tim to the garden, he looked at Jack. Every time Jack was different, he became wrinkled, and his fierce smile began to look silly. And so it goes through, and it actually talks about the decomposition of Jack and how Jack kind of starts to, he becomes all moldy, right? And then wintertime, and he forgets about him. But then, of course, in the spring, Jack, the plant, comes back. And so, again, another book that talks a little bit about the decomposition and then the life cycle that comes after that as well. So, good book. But my all-time favorite, and I got to tell you this, I think it's something about the fact that it's just gross. The book is gross. And when I say it's gross, kids love it too. But Rotten Pumpkin. It's actually a rotten tale in 15 voices. And as you'll come to see in this book, the 15 voices are actually the organisms that help to break down the pumpkin. And I love this book because the pictures are real and it's very scientific. And the author uses the correct scientific terms for all of the things that break this pumpkin down. And your students will absolutely love this. So, so it goes through, and for instance, it talks about how squirrels and even slugs like to eat the inside of a pumpkin. And then it talks about, of course, flies are another visitor to the pumpkin that help to break it down, and how they dissolve the pumpkin with their vomit. Yes, let me just read this to you. My keen fly nose smells what I'm looking for. Dead fish, rotten meat, dog dew. You know your kids would like this. The stinkier, the better. A rotten pumpkin is perfect. I taste it with my feet. You're going to love hearing how I eat. I vomit on the pumpkin flesh. My vomit dissolves the pumpkin nutrients so I can lap them up. A delicious, nutritious morning smoothie. How's that for scientific? And then, of course, here we go. So in Pumpkin Jack, we saw that the pumpkin got moldy, right? Well, guess what this author does? He actually tells you what the mold really is. And so I mold with a nasty name. People call me black rot. I'm black and I rot. Someone cut holes into this pumpkin and that really helped me out. Now I've got soft, fresh pumpkin flesh for lunch. Rotten fellow that I am, I'll turn Jack to mush. Look at this. So here's the great piece. So think about this. You can actually put your pumpkin outside, maybe in the courtyard, maybe outside your classroom door, maybe in the front. You could actually change the location of your pumpkin. So now we can get into, you can actually set up 2 science research pieces, a descriptive research piece where you put a pumpkin outside that's been carved and you just let it rot and you observe the changes, and you can follow this book and actually create a chart that has the organisms, and your students can mark off which organisms from this book they see that it's been on their pumpkin. Or you could actually do an experiment where you change the location of your pumpkin and see if location makes a difference in terms of how fast the pumpkin begins to rot. So that question actually came from my son when we used to do pumpkins with our kiddos when they were little. And my daughter got a pumpkin to carve and my son got a pumpkin to carve. And one day when my son got out of the car, he noticed that his pumpkin, which was sitting in the sun, was kind of becoming yuckier faster than my daughter's pumpkin that was in the shade. So he was like, well, wait a second. I wonder if I put my pumpkin in the shade, does that really make a difference? And so he carved another pumpkin and put it in the shade, and sure enough, it didn't decompose as fast as his pumpkin had in the sunshine. So it did make a difference. So that's going to be something that your kiddos investigate as well. So they make a change. So think about it. You could have the pumpkin rotting and just sitting there and, describing what organisms are breaking it down, and then you could actually have your kiddos change the location. So now you're doing a descriptive research and an experimental research piece as well. So again, I love this. Black rot, I appreciate you. I'm Fusanarum rot. What a great word, right? Fusanarum. And you prepared the pumpkin skin for me like a gardener's hoe prepares the earth. I landed as a spore, and a tiny gray spore, great reddish fungus can grow. Now you're gone, but I'm living off the land you readied for me, pumpkin land. So it's just a great, great realistic book for your budding scientists to study. Look, there's the actual fungus. Like, can you imagine seeing something like this? Like, isn't that gross? And then, of course, you've got the spores that it shows you really, really well. So again, one of my favorite books. Hopefully, you've enjoyed learning about some of these great children's literature connections that you can do with your unit this fall on changes or decomposition. Go grab these. Your kiddos will love them. And again, just have fun doing science with your students this fall. And remember, science doesn't have to be hard or expensive, it just has to be fun. All right, have a great one. See you next time.